Welcome to Eat, Sleep, Wine, Repeat, a podcast for all you wine lovers who, if you're like me, just cannot get enough of the good stuff. I'm Yanina Dore, your host, brand ambassador, wine educator, and sommelier. So stick with me as we dive deeper into this ever-evolving, wonderful world of wine. And wherever you are listening to this, cheers to you. Welcome to this special mini-series where we take a closer look at the people and organisations in the wine world who are championing diversity, equity and inclusion. So across these episodes, I'm going to be sitting down with inspiring voices from winemakers and educators to change makers across the industry, all doing meaningful work to shape a more inclusive future for wine. These conversations are designed to uplift, to challenge and to leave us all reflecting on how we can make positive changes in our own spaces, whether that's in the vineyard, the tasting room or the boardroom. While we may not be diving quite as deep into the usual wine geekery this time around, I promise you'll still walk away with plenty to think about, fresh perspectives and perhaps a few new producers to discover, all rooted in purpose. I hope each episode leaves you feeling just a little bit more inspired than when you started. Today's episode, we are heading to Napa Valley to chat with Amber Minha, Global Sales Director of the iconic Staglin Family Vineyard, a winery that's not only known for exceptional Rutherford Bench Cabernet Sauvignon, but also for weaving mental health advocacy into the very fabric of their business. We'll be discussing their One Mind Foundation, and I'll be tasting a bottle of their Salus wine where they donate 100% of the profits from the sale of these wines to brain health research. Amber shares the story of how the Staglin family built their estate, what makes their vineyards on the Rutherford Bench so special, and discussing why Napa Cabernet Sauvignon isn't expensive, it's worth it. So whether you're here for the wine, the storytelling, or the inspiration, this is one of those episodes that reminds us how much more meaningful wine becomes when it's rooted in values. So pour yourself a glass of wine and enjoy part 5. Amber, thank you so much for joining me. I am very excited to quiz you all about Staglin Family Vineyard. And I know that this vineyard has loads of history. So perhaps do we start with what inspired the family to purchase the estate and start making wines, I guess, again for themselves in Napa Valley?
Yeah, absolutely. So the family really decided this a little bit later in life, in their late 30s, early 40s. And they had really fell in love with the Napa Valley early on. They went to UCLA and fell in love there on a blind date, interestingly. And They really fell in love with the valley itself and thought someday it would be amazing if they could actually come back and own something. So they did come back to the valley and tried to find something and had put offers in on other areas unfortunately, it didn't come through. And through a friend, they had actually heard about this space in Rutherford, and they had always wanted to be in Rutherford, but to get land in Rutherford was really difficult. It's really one of the most sought after places, especially the Benchland, which is where we are. And so before it actually went up onto the for sale in general to the public, they had already placed a check under the door and said that they would take that. When it actually did go up for sale, not by mistake, but when it actually did go up for sale, they had gotten a couple offers that were actually more than that, but they had already put down the money. So they had to accept it, and it did go through, and they were able to purchase the property. But the property, that was in 1985. The property actually has had grapes on that area since 1864. So a very historic property in the Napa Valley itself.
And so you said that this is in the Rutherford Bench. So for listeners that are really unfamiliar with, well, I guess Napa in general, what is so special about Rutherford Bench compared to more the fertile valleys or even other parts in Napa that are more up in the mountains, higher up, higher altitude?
Right. So the Napa Valley is actually quite small, so 30 miles long, up to 4 miles wide. And Rutherford is really in the middle of the valley itself. So it's one of the 17 AVAs, or American viticulture areas. And the Benchland area is, if you imagine, you have 2 mountain ranges that envelope the valley itself. We're on the west side, And we're underneath the tallest point, Mount St. John. And so if you can imagine, over 11 million years, this mountain range has eroded down and built up in the base of that mountain and created this sloped area. And it combines different soils. So we have clay soil, and then we have this beautiful nutrient-rich soil off the valley floor. We also have a small riverbed that actually runs right below on the base of the property. So you have riverbed sediment and things. And then you have these alluvial fans coming off of the mountain itself, and beautiful limestone and rock. So it really combines and it creates a new soil series. So what they say, it's perfect for Cabernet Sauvignon. But also, we're also on the west side itself. So the sun rises on the east, it sets in the west. And I mentioned earlier that we're underneath the tallest point. So the sun will hit that tallest point, really provide us with a bunch of shade in the hottest part of the day, which allows us to have a little bit longer hang time and have a little bit more acidity, cool down the grapes itself. So it's great.
And actually, you put it, bring in the bottle of wine. We won't talk about it yet, but you've even talked about the Rutherford dust on the back label of the wine we're going to try. And I've heard this expression before, which is, am I right in thinking this is kind of the idea of added minerality to the wine because of the soil types?
Yeah, I would say minerality, but also dusty. There's a dusty quality to the flavors in the wine and what it does in your mouth, but also it kind of refers to the tannins structure. So you get these velvety tannins, and tannins are what dry out your mouth, but also what hold together the wine, as well as the acidity. So you get these dusty tannins, and you get this finish that people seem to love and think that they can point out, which I believe it does definitely bring that characteristic. Also, a cocoa powder like that, if you can imagine, like that, where it's not sweet, but it's this kind of dusty, when you think about cocoa powder and how it goes in your mouth, like maybe on top of tiramisu or something, you get this dustiness character in your mouth.
I mean, who doesn't want to have tiramisu in their wine?
Yeah, true story there.
But everybody listening, we will get onto the wine in a moment. Let's talk a little bit about this winery, because as we mentioned, it is a family-run operation, I think, in every sense. So I just wondered, in terms of the approach to winemaking and leadership, what has that meant, having the family so much involved?
Yeah, so being family-owned is actually, I would say, I bet 75 to 80% of wineries in Napa Valley are family-owned. But family operated is pretty different, meaning that the family actually works every day at the winery. We're not only family owned and operated, but also women owned and run. So Sherry Staglin, who's 80 this year, she purchased the property 40 years ago, and her daughter now, next generation, is taking over with her, and has been now for 8 or 9 years, and is the president. So Garen has now recently retired from a lot of his other career. And obviously also has drank the wine and done all these entertaining and things throughout the years with the wine. But everybody has a job. Everybody works. I would say Sherry Staglin really is a mentor to many in the industry, because being a woman 40 years ago, going out and selling wine was pretty unheard of. And she still works every day harder than I would say most people do at 80. So yes, it's pretty amazing.
Quite clearly, it's all that Cabernet Sauvignon that she's making and drinking that's keeping her young and sprightly.
Well, for her, it's actually Chardonnay. So we have this little tiny 8-acre plot on the bottom of the Benchland area, and it has a Lake County clay soil and perfect for Merlot. And when she purchased the property, David Abreu, who is a very sought-after farmer / vineyard manager now, we were really one of his first jobs back then. And he wanted to plant Merlot. And she said, I'm sorry, I drink Chardonnay and I really want to plant Chardonnay. And he said, it's too hot for Chardonnay here. No one will plant Chardonnay. And she said, well, you have to plant Chardonnay. I'm sorry. Otherwise, you can't have this job, essentially. So he did plant Chardonnay, and now I would say our Chardonnay is very sought after, sells out really quickly, and funny enough, David Abreu drinks our Chardonnay, and that's his kind of thing. So her nickname is Sherry Chardonnay, and essentially she'd be damned to own a winery and have to buy somebody else's. So
that is ironic.
Have this great Chardonnay.
Oh my gosh! Well, the major percentage of what you produce though is Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yes, it is Cabernet Sauvignon, and we do have a tiny bit of Cabernet Franc and Petit Verdot grown on the property. And then we also, very, very different than most, we have a little over an acre of Sangiovese.
Interesting.
that we grow and people love. We make a standalone Sangiovese, and then we also have a rosé of Sangiovese that we sell in the summer. And I always feel like, I don't know if there's a couple hundred bottles made or something like that, and I always feel like I'm gone all the time, so I feel like I never end up getting any of that.
Oh no, well I hope.
I know.
I hope at the very least that you get to
get
try
Cabernet.
a little bit of this Salus Staglin Family Vineyard Estate Cabernet Sauvignon. I have a 2019 in my
Great vintage
hand.
as well.
Good. I feel very fortunate then. Can you start by explaining to everybody, what does Salus mean, and why did you choose that name for this label?
Yeah, so we have the Staglin Family Vineyard wines, which would be Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon. And then in the late 90s, we started this wine called Staglin Salus Cabernet Sauvignon. So Salus is actually the Roman goddess of health. And if you look on the label, when you held up the label, there's a woman on the label, and that is the Roman goddess Salus. And she adorns our Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon, which I would say it's not our second label, but it's grapes that don't go into Staglin that we end up putting in Salus. Very high quality and all those things. But we make that wine for many different reasons, but the main reason is Salus being the Roman goddess of health. We have a philanthropic arm to the winery, and both Salus wines, we actually donate 100% to charity for brain and mental health research. Mm-hmm. And that really stems from their son was diagnosed with schizophrenia at his first year at Dartmouth in 1989. And they, as parents, you can imagine in the late 80s being diagnosed with a mental illness. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And when he was diagnosed with that back in the late 80s, the stigma for mental health was pretty different than it is now. But also, they really couldn't find any help or research. So after a couple of years, they started this charity. It's called One Mind, so onemind.org. And we have out through the years, not only through wine, but fundraising as well, have raised $603 million for brain health.
Incredible.
And really made a huge impact globally in the mental and brain health awareness.
See, this is exactly what I wanted to dig into, because I think it's such an important subject to touch on. So much in the past, there's always been a stigma behind mental health. And thank goodness we are finally talking about it, because even the statistics say 1 in 4 of us have certain illnesses with our brain. I think I wrote this down in one of the information, one of the videos that you guys have put out. It's saying over 100 million Americans are suffering with some sort of mental health. And I think, and also the pressures in general on the day-to-day, let alone other kind of illnesses with the brain. This is something that affects so many of us, whether it's ourselves, whether it's a family member, a work colleague. So it needs to be something that's discussed. And thank goodness we are a little bit more open to talk about. So this incredible charity that the family has started, did it start with actually a music festival that's then developed into something more serious?
Absolutely. So you may have heard of the critically acclaimed chef Charlie Trotter. He is from Chicago, and he really brought to the Midwest the first 3 Michelin restaurant. And he has struggled with mental illness. He actually is no longer with us, but he struggled with mental health as well. And he ended up meeting the Staglins. They became friends. And he said, you know what, we should really try to get together and raise money. And so he came out with his team. He donated his time, and he did the dinner at the vineyard. And we had the San Francisco Symphony come and play in the vineyard. And that was the first music festival.
Wow.
And of course, it was everybody, all hands on deck in the community, but everybody came and gave money, and it was amazing. And throughout the years, we've just celebrated our 31st annual, which this coming year will be the 32nd, with Train playing in the middle of the vineyard. But we've had great acts throughout the years. Lyle Lovett, Sheryl Crow, Jewel, One Republic, Jennifer Hudson, beautiful people that have played in the vineyard and helped us raise money for this important cause. And some of the things that we focus in on, schizophrenia, bipolar, anxiety, depression, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, PTSD, brain injuries, autism. So all things that, like you said, everybody knows somebody themselves, their friends, their family, somebody that has struggled with that. So it definitely makes a lot of sense.
No, it's amazing. And from looking up this charity, it's very much about personal stories and what's actually in the living experiences, but mixed with science. So the idea is really digging deeper so we can find ways to handle everything or make positive change, isn't it? So I was going to ask, what kind of impact are the family hoping to make by leading so openly with this work?
Well, number one, it's to reduce stigma and obviously make change happen. So research is really important. And we not only focus in on Eastern medicine, Western medicine, but also really backing young scientists who can really make change happen. And then it's just getting the word out and not feeling that stigma or thinking that we shouldn't talk about it in public. And so, and as you know, I think COVID has really changed that. And I think people are more apt to talk about it. And I think businesses are more available to help employees. And we started this certain focus, One Mind at Work. Mm-hmm. And our website is amazing. onemind.org is great for that. And I think Staglin Family is a great platform to talk about that as well. So, I mean, I do wine dinners all over the world, and, we constantly are talking about it. When I have our distributor partners or import partners, we're constantly talking about it. And talking about it really brings, I think, a nice base of how we can change just by talking about it.
Yeah. I think that's exactly it. The more that this becomes a normal everyday conversation, the more also people who are suffering, I think this is one of the big things. And especially at work, you're like, I can't possibly say I can't come into work because I'm having a mental health day. You feel that to actually be able to say to someone, knowing that it will be understood and having somebody maybe
and okay.
help you through. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love the fact it feels quite special that in my hand, I have this glass of wine, which you guys have made, but this is going to something so important and 100% of the profit. So I'm going to taste it. I've been sniffing it as you've been talking. But actually, whilst I have a little taste, what would you say is the, I guess, Staglin style? You've got the highest quality wines going into the one above. This is almost like the second wine. What should people expect from your Cabernet Sauvignons? I know you've already talked about the area, I suppose. Maybe
of course. Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, we organically produce and farm the grapes, which I think is really important. You have to have, number one, you have to have great soil. Number two, you have to treat that soil incredibly well. And then plant great grapes, have great farmers, and do all the good practices that you can. We obviously have a great terroir, as they call it, so weather and all those things. But our wines, we don't do a lot to them. And I know that sounds interesting, but we take great grapes and we make great wine. And we do that by really focusing on quality, not doing a lot. We don't fine or filter any of the reds. We find that pulls things out. And, we try to do not a lot, honestly. So we're known a little bit more for a balanced, lower alcohol, not a big fat jammy Cabernet style. We have a little bit more graceful elegance, ageability. So we just actually had our 40th anniversary party 2 weekends ago, and we opened up wines from our 4 major winemakers: 89, 95, 01, and 2018. And the 89 was still shining bright. So at almost 40 years old, if you think about that, it's, right away that backs what we're thinking and what we're really about, and knowing that actually can happen. So acidity in the wine is really what is the foundation of allowing that to age. But also, we have a wine that you can open up the bottle right now in a new vintage, and it's still delicious. And sometimes that's a little bit harder with Bordeaux and certain Cabernet Sauvignons. Maybe you want to wait a little bit so the tannins drop out and it starts to really excel. But you can open up ours now and drink it, or you can wait for 20 or 30 years.
This is so plush but soft, and I am on my palate. Normally I would go aromas first, but actually the thing that's the most beautiful is this slightly earthy mocha coffee. I don't want to say dustiness. I want to come up with something.
Cocoa dust. I like that.
well, you've still given it to me. I want to come up with something creative. But it's true. So the fruit, actually, it's not just black fruit. There's even, I wouldn't even quite go to blueberry, but there's like a muskiness. There's this slight soily, slightly more, what were you going to say?
Roasty?
I don't want to go toasty. I just feel like it doesn't go quite as far as savory. Like there's still, sweetness of fruit, but not as you would expect from, it's not a big fruit bomb. It's not the Napa cabs of 10, 15 years ago. And there is a real musky, slightly just earthy, suggestive perfume. And I love the fact that not only does it have the mocha, the cacao dust, we're taking it, we're leading with it, cacao dust, but then the finish has got these lovely licorice. It's just got that like slight sweet spice vibes on the finish. But just more, the mouthfeel is very light feathered. It's going full body, but again, I really like a full body wine that doesn't feel heavy in the palate. That I don't feel weighed down.
You want texture and body, but you don't want it to be viscous.
And do you know what it is? The slight earthiness is like this lovely little lick of leather that's probably coming from the oak, but not. It's really not powerful. It's really in the distance. Everything is just actually it's quite subtle. It's just a very beautiful, subtle, elegant, juicy, but I don't want to use the word juicy as in fruit bomb because I want everyone to understand it's not actually anywhere near there. And I guess that's because of not just your soil type, but again, it's a fresher style and that beautiful acidity. And, this is a 15% alcohol wine, as I would expect.
14.9.
Yes, exactly. You can choose. You should have marked it down to 14.5 because, for anyone listening, you can always choose 0.5 with one way or the other. And this for me is definitely feels like a 14.5 rather than a 15. Actually, it transports me outside. There's a slight autumnal vibe to this. It can't be wintry because it's not spiced enough. It's not dark enough. It's not chocolatey enough. Right. It's not floral enough to be spring or summer. It's just starting to take you back down to the earth. We're September, October vibes. Everyone's like, what the hell does that mean? I know what it means.
I know what it means too.
We know what it means because we've tasted this. This is not a Monday night bottle of wine for everybody. I've looked in the UK. This is around £100 a bottle. But if you're after something very special, I can imagine as well, if I decanted this, I imagine in 2 hours' time, this is so approachable. I literally poured this out half an hour ago. Absolutely delicious, and it's just poured out directly into the glass. But I think with a decanter as well, I can only imagine as well what's going to happen in 2 hours' time. So for anybody looking for a really special wine, how beautiful when you really, I sometimes say, oh, it's guilt-free drinking. This is a sustainable winery. And of course, it's good. We feel good. But actually, this is a really humane wine. How incredible to know that your money, 100%, is going towards something so important. So everybody, I'll put some information in the show notes. I did write down, they didn't say the vintage online, everybody, but Simply Wines Direct in the UK is selling it for 105. And if you want an older vintage, I've got 2019, but there's a 2016 for £97.50 with the Champagne Company. So they are what I found in the UK. But is this something that many people will find in America? Is it? Or is it quite?
So I would say we're distributed widely. We only make about 6,500 cases total of all of our wines combined. So we are in about 45 states and about 30 countries. We have a tiny bit of wine in a lot of places. I would say this is actually our restaurant powerhouse wine. In America, it fits in a really good price point that's selling between that 160 and 240 mark on a wine list. So it's a really great restaurant wine because it over delivers when you put some of the other Napa products next to it at the same price. Now I can say that, but it's true, so it's okay.
I'm drinking this right now. I can happily agree. But I mean, Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon is known all over the world, and it is known for its quality. But we were talking about this before when we were planning this episode, weren't we? And I think one of the things you said is many people will ask the question, but why is Napa Valley so expensive?
Mm-hmm.
And you said to me, I'm going to answer that for you on the episode. So I would love to know, because I still don't know your answer specifically. This is worth it 100%.
Yeah, why is Napa expensive?
Mm-hmm.
Well, numerous reasons, but I'm going to start off with it's really one of the most consistent wine regions in the world in a positive way. There are very few vintages over the last, 50 or 60 years that have been poor for Napa Valley. And a lot of that stems right away from the Mediterranean climate zone. So that's the only place in the United States that has a Mediterranean climate zone, which really only covers between 2 and 3% of the entire Earth. Mediterranean. So hot days, cool nights, which gives the grapes the ability to cool down at night, which retains acidity, gives more fruit characteristics. We only have rain which would be in the winter months. So that's October until essentially March or April. So from April until October, we really have no rain. And if you think about having no rain, that stresses out the vine a little bit. Napa is, most people are dry farmed, not everybody, but because we don't have rain, we have very little pests because of that, right? I grew up in a small state in the middle of the United States that we got tons of rain, and that produces mosquitoes and flies and all these things. And we just don't have that in the Napa Valley, or very little of it. And then also with no rain, we don't have a lot of focus with fungus and mildew, and we don't have humidity. So with no humidity, same thing, very little mildew and things like that can hurt the vine. So right now, I'm in the UK right now. I have a tiny vineyard here, and it is all we battle with constantly because of so much rain is mildew, mold, humidity, all these things. And we don't have that in the Napa Valley, and that's really important. And then consistent as far as temperature as well. So I think that's most importantly that in other regions you have hail, you have rain, which will cause mildew, you have all these other issues, and we just really don't have a lot of those issues, which is great.
So you guys are farming organically. You mentioned this. Is that something that is just very easy then, because humidity, pressure, mildew, all this stuff is not an issue? Is it quite an organic area, Napa Valley in general, or is that still a trend?
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think more than half are definitely farming organically. Those that are not are farming sustainable, which is a little bit could be different than organic. You have some people that are biodynamic as well, and you have to be organic to become biodynamic. So I would say most of our neighbors are organics, or actually I think all of our neighboring vineyards are organic. So, we don't have any of this kind of fly off that comes through. And it is much easier. That doesn't mean that everyone does it, but it is much easier than it would be in other regions. You have much less risk of losing everything. But that doesn't mean that we don't have risk, because we still do. It's just, and I think nowadays people have become way more creative on farming and what we can do. And that's one thing that Napa Valley is great about, as well as innovations and and they also have the financial ability to be innovative and take risks and try new things.
Well, this is interesting, actually. I would love to know just a little bit as well about your winemaking philosophy, because, for instance, drinking this wine, it does not feel heavily oaked at all. There is actually this probably beautiful lick of cedar, which is what's taking me outdoors and making me feel slightly autumnal, but it's not big vanilla spice. And the chocolate feels like it's coming through with more the tannins and actually the flavors rather than oak influence. So I'd love to know just a little bit about that. But also, I suppose, Napa is, I want to say, hot. Obviously, we know down in the further southern part in Carneros, of course, much cooler and hotter, actually, even further north than you guys. So I know Napa is actually so interesting and different, but you are a warmer area, and this wine I'm drinking is 14.9%. Is there changes amongst yourself or even wineries around you where, again, you're looking at this rise in temperature, getting alcohol levels down, or is it just more making sure you keep the wine in balance? And that was a lot of questions. I'll hand that back over to you whilst I take a sip.
I'll go with questions. So I think I'll touch first on alcohol. I find it really hard now to find a wine from Italy and some even Bordeaux's that are under 15%, especially Italian wine. I would say I look at that a lot, as we get older, and I've been in the business 25 years, you're trying to drink a little bit less, but balance is really key. I've had a lot of 13% wines that are just not balanced and taste hot, and they shouldn't be. And I've had I had a 16% alcohol wine the other day that I didn't even think was 14 or 13. So it is all about balance. And we do a lot of things differently maybe than most. Like our Chardonnays, for instance, we inhibit mallow, so we don't have the big buttery, rich style of Chardonnay.
Mm-hmm.
And we do barrel ferment the wine, though, in with only very large barrels, but only about 40% new oak. So we're getting texture and body and creaminess and richness in the wine, but when you swallow, it's clean and fresh. And, that style of Chardonnay really, I think, hits all categories. Somebody who loves butter and oak likes it because it's still got richness and mouthfeel. But when you swallow, clean and fresh, and sometimes in the other style of Chardonnay, when you swallow, it's really viscous and oily, and that's not our style. Now, also alongside that with Cabernet Sauvignon, we don't use 100% new French oak, which a lot of people do. I think we use around 80% new French oak, and a couple of them are also larger barrels. And what that does is it gives you a balance of fruit tannin, which comes from the skins and seeds, and oak tannin, which comes from the barrel. So that's like that balance of getting the tannin structure right. And also because I mentioned earlier, we are on that west side and we're on the benchland area, like this essentially. When that sun hits that point, we're a little bit cooler. So as you know, heat, not too hot, but heat and being in the sun will give you riper characteristics. And so because we have this beautiful shade later in the day, we also have a wind tunnel that goes through on the benchland in our area, which really provides us with just so many benefits. And one of them is what we think is the winemakers also help with that, obviously, but creating balanced wines.
Yeah, this is beautiful. I actually, you know what? I want to say that this wine is it's polished and it's almost like fine boned. And I don't want people to think then it's thin, but it's the texture. This wine, it's all about the texture. And I think the fact that you are using larger barrels quite clearly, yes, still some new oak, but the larger. So for anyone who just doesn't really understand how that will work, it's the amount of juice, actually the surface area, there's less surface area compared to wine, and I think you guys have got that perfect balance. Yeah. And also interesting, you keep the malic acid, so you keep that acid structure really bright, and that probably allows the fruit to shine through more. So yeah, really, really enjoying this. I want to wrap around slightly, I guess, to the topic of inclusivity, because this is also the theme of this episode. It's just really, I've realised as I'm talking to more wonderful human beings like yourself that actually it's actually just the topic of humanity. That this is what it is. So I just wondered on this topic, for you, how are you guys working to create a more equitable, welcoming wine industry? Is there anything that you're doing inside the winery, whether it be in hiring, or is there mentorship programs or community outreach initiatives that you'd want to share?
Yeah, sure. So, we're a tiny team. There's 2 sales people. We have 3 in hospitality and wine club. We have 3 on the winemaking team, and then we have 3 or 4 harvest interns that come in for a couple of months out of the year. And then Sherry and Shannon, who also work every single day. So we just have this incredibly tiny team. Sorry, I forgot about the most important 2 people, which are 3 people, which are the accounting team and the people in the office, which are a very, very important team. And then we have some part-time people that help cook and do all these things as well. But having a small team, I think Sherry has always been very focused on not just hiring women, but, it was really important for her to give, women a chance and women a break, and knowing that that's what she does. So I would say we definitely have a lot of women that work for us. I shouldn't say a lot, but we have women that work for us, more so than most. I think that's changed a lot over the last 5 to 7 years, but I mean, back then, very different. in our industry, and I don't mind saying this at all, but in our industry too, most people have degrees and all those things. I mean, she hired me and I did not have a college degree, which I think was really important. And she took a look big picture and knew me and knew that I had great experience in what I was doing. So I didn't really necessarily need that degree in order to make that happen. If you look around, at Staglin in general with our philanthropic arm, it's constant with helping people. I meet people at wine dinners. We have people in the community that come, and we're constantly trying to help people and connect people with the right people. If that makes sense.
No, 100%. And I suppose in terms of any other winery or a small family-run business right now listening, you are doing incredible things, especially on that for mental health causes. If they were, I don't know, unsure of where to start, do you have any advice or a tip, considering you've seen the transition that Staglin Family Vineyard has gone through with One Mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think number one, going onto our website, One Mind, there are obviously now, this is not One Mind has been in business now, over 30 years. So there's a board there. It's not us running the charity anymore. I mean, obviously Sherry and Garen and their son Brandon is the whole reason why we started the charity. They're all involved. They're all working it. But as far as we have a lot of other people that work at One Mind now as well. And so I think going onto the website is number one. And I would say, all of the emails are on there. Reach out. And if you have questions at how you can do more, be more, we have a program called One Mind at Work, which is really important. And Garen Staglin has been really just a pioneer in going through. And even in the UK, he was actually in London last year and had a big meeting with owners of businesses to try to initiate One Mind at Work. So it's just a really important part. And I think the thing is that if you emailed one of them, they would email you back. And I think that's also a very important piece of that puzzle is they're attainable. They're around. They're very gracious in trying to not only connect, but be a mentor and be a part of really make a solution for the future for this.
Do you know, I think it's like the message I'm getting to transmit to everybody is just if you don't know, just ask the questions. And it can, in life in general, sometimes when it's a subject that we are not very familiar with, and maybe we don't want to say the wrong words, we don't want to offend the people, I think you need
don't want to be embarrassed. Don't want to be...
Totally. But it's one of these things where we, to make change, maybe need to put ourselves into slightly uncomfortable positions for ourselves instead of protecting our own, am I going to say something stupid? I've always believed in, you can always apologize. As long as what you're doing, you're leading with intention, at least you're trying, you're making a difference. So just keep asking the questions, I think.
Absolutely.
That's the message, everyone. Ask the questions.
Like Ask questions.
Ask questions. So looking ahead, what is next for Staglin Family Estate? Is there going to be some changes in the vineyard, the cellar, the community? Anything exciting?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So we have been solar run since the early 2000s. I think we're going to be focusing on, because our solar panels are quite old at this point, so some renewal there. We have uplifted, I don't know, it's like between 10 and 15 acres, and we're doing a major replant right now. A lot of our vines were put in the 80s, early 90s, so that life cycle of the vine is coming up, and we found that, that's a really financially large job, and we do all the right things. So we leave the ground fallow for 3 years. We do a lot of things to incorporate back before we replant. So that's been going on right now, the replant. And then we have the transition right now from Shannon taking over some of the, day-to-day, I shouldn't say, she's taken over a lot of the day-to-day kind of things with budgets and all these things. And so having Shannon now be a little bit more of a face of the winery, even though Sherry is still 100% the face of the winery, mentioning that her and Garen are both 80 and still work literally every single day. They're at every wine auction really all around the country and still travel globally. So they're very, very much still in the know. But I think Sherry has handed the baton on some things to Shannon, which I think has been really great. And seeing the next generation, which right now is so important. In Napa Valley, we've seen a lot of wineries that have not had that next gen to take over. And so we've seen some really historic brands over the last 40 years that have been sold to larger companies. And we're really proud to say that we're still continuing forth being family owned and operated. So
beautiful. Can I just ask one question? I was like, I'm going to sum up the episode, but no, I'm not ready yet. So,
sure.
So you said it's interesting that you're going to grab up some vines because probably, I guess, they're 35, 40 years old, more or less. Do you feel the kind of norm? Of course, we talked about old vines on this podcast many times, and there are moments when vines can live for 150 years and they can do excellent things. But on an average, in terms of when they really start producing very little fruit, are you finding in your area of Napa, 35, 40 years is quite normal to then start looking at replanting again for productivity?
I think it's normal. I think it's also, certain grapes like Zinfandel, for instance, can live for much longer and produce much longer and better than, let's say, Cabernet Sauvignon. But we also have, just like any other wine region, we have certain we have red blotch disease, for instance, and, you have phylloxera, you have things. So there are certain things that can come up that makes you make that decision. Maybe it's time. For instance, we have this one block that we had planted maybe 9 years ago and realized that because we pick by blocks, we ferment and then we blend, right? So we've realized that block we had never used in Staglin Cab. We never really used it in Salus. We sold it.
Yeah.
And so you're sitting there thinking after 5, 6, 7 years, like, oh God, why are we continuously investing in this if we're not using it? It's not making the cut. It's not going to get any better. By 5, 6 years, that's what it's going to be. Mm-hmm. And so our style is not really changing, right? So we lifted it up and we replanted. And so I think, those kind of things I think are really important. And also, that also costs a lot of money. So financially, I think that really goes to show how the Staglins are. They focus on quality in every aspect of their life, and they're willing to make the sacrifice to continue to build a reputation over 40 years, which has been, amazing. All about doing the right thing, all about doing the right thing for the vineyard, for the land, for the community. That commitment to quality in every aspect of their life and the commitment to family is just really unprecedented, I think.
Beautiful. Can people come and visit you guys?
Yes, we can. Absolutely. So the easiest way to do that is to go on our website, and we have a little come visit section, I think, that you can type in your name and all those things. We're open Monday through Friday. Always. Sometimes we take Saturday appointments. And, we're on a dead end road off Bella Oaks Lane. It's amazing. A lot of people will say that, Napa is so busy, and this little dead end road that we're on in the end, you can look over the valley, and it's just really awesome. So a really magical, special place. Almost everybody gets to meet a Staglin when they're there, Sherry or Shannon or, whoever that may be. And our hospitality really rolls out the red carpet for everybody. You get a tour of the vineyard, you get a tour of our 24,000 square foot cave system inside of the mountain range itself. And then you come back and taste our Chardonnays, Cabernets, and then we always pull a library vintage as well. So it's a really amazing space.
That is a treat to be able to have to taste how it will be if you could ever be patient enough to hold on to a bottle.
Yes, exactly. And we also have olive oil as well. So estate organic olive oil that you'll be able to have on roasted almonds.
Beautiful. Right. I'm coming. Now, finally, as I sip the last little bit of what I have in my glass of this delicious Salus, if you could, let's just fit a little bit of fun. Who would you want to drink a glass of Salus with, a past or present? Anybody?
That's a good question, isn't it? Well, I have to say, I would probably love to drink it with my grandmother. She was just the best. I loved, if I could, my grandmother and grandfather together, that they're quite a pair. And this is actually, I don't know if this is good or bad. She wouldn't drink Salus and like it. But if I could have a glass of wine, she actually used to drink a really, really bad wine out of like the 5-liter jug. But I would take them to church on Sundays, and we would come back, and we always had like a shot of wine after we got back, church started at 8, right? So we get back at 9:20, and we'd be having these little shots of wine. So I think if I could have one more day with these really bad shots of wine with my grandparents, that would probably be what I'd want.
Well, that you couldn't have answered it better, because I think that just is that perfect representation that wine, if you allow it, is not just fermented grape juice. It is this time vessel, this historic, artistic, creative liquid that allows us to just bring people together and to enhance memories. And just it's that beautiful connection. No, nature.
Who would you have a glass with? Out of curiosity.
Gosh, do you know what? When I was thinking about this question, I thought, God, I hope she doesn't ask me. I think, do you know what? Maybe I'm going to go down like maybe wine royalty. Just the first person that's come to my head that I think would be really interesting. I'd love to taste this with André Tchelistcheff, who, for anyone who doesn't know, very celebrated enologist who just did incredible things for the American wine industry. And certainly I know from reading a little bit about the history of this estate, he was involved before the Staglin family took over and then stayed on to help. And I just think that would be beautiful to bring a little slice of history, somebody who just knows so much about wine, someone who has impacted wine so much. And I would just nerd out as I had more than a shot of this.
When you walk into our tasting facility, which is the original Stechter house, which was the original house that was I don't know if it was built in 1864, but it was built around that. And we have that original bones of the house that we've redone. And when you walk in, there's a staircase, like a little bit of a steps that go up to another tasting room. And we have a picture of André on there next to one of our older vines, which was planted in the 60s that we actually still have. And he's a very short man. And so he is literally the same size of the vine. And rumor has it that he smoked like 2 packs of cigarettes a day at least. And he was all about cleanliness and all these things. And so very interesting guy. And his son his grandson did a really cool movie, if you've never heard of it. But so Mark Tchelistcheff ended up making this movie about his grandfather, André. And it's really interesting. You should check it out.
I absolutely will. What a wonderful way to finish off this podcast. Amber, thank you so much for just taking us a little bit into the world of Staglin Family Vineyard. I've only had one glass of that Salus. So over dinner, I will make sure to be sharing it. I think I might save it to have with my dad. He's very special. So in terms of present, maybe I will wait. I will be with them this weekend. So I think I've used the Coravan, everyone. Always be clever. With special wines, start with a Coravan. Smart. And then you know how good the wine is. And so let me know how it is out over the weekend then. Yeah, I absolutely will. Thank you so much. And we'll speak soon.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope this conversation has left you with plenty to reflect on. Do not forget, all the details on One Mind are in the show notes. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, please do share it far and wide so these important messages can reach more ears. Now, next week, I'm sitting down with the phenomenal Carmen Stevens, the first Black female winemaker to graduate in South Africa. Her journey into wine has been anything but easy, and I cannot wait for you to hear her powerful and rather emotional story. But before we wrap up, I'll leave you with a quote as always, and this one is on mental health, resilience, compassion. Matt Haig, who wrote Reasons to Stay Alive, said, "There is no standard normal. Normal is subjective. There are 7 billion versions of normal on this planet." I hope that is a beautiful reminder of acceptance and the uniqueness of all our own individual journeys. Now, if you've enjoyed this, please follow, rate, and review. It really helps make the podcast more discoverable. And do not forget to share this episode with someone who might benefit. Until next Monday, wine friends, cheers to you.